My son sent me a text message while I was standing at a checkout counter swiping my card for a $4,500 gift for his home. The text read, "Dad, this cruise is just for us three. Mia says you are too old and you would just slow us down. Family only." He sent that while I was paying for the teak wood to build his new deck. He forgot one thing. I co-signed the mortgage on the house he was texting from. So I did not just cancel the cruise. I canceled his entire lifestyle. And trust me, he never saw it coming. Before I tell you how I legally evicted my own son from the house I paid for, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to remind someone who really holds the power. I was standing at the counter of Lumber World in downtown Seattle. The air smelled of sawdust and expensive cedar. It was a smell I had loved for 40 years as a general contractor, but today it just smelled like money. My credit card, a Platinum American Express that I had earned through decades of sweating in the rain, was halfway into the chip reader. The cashier, a young woman named Sarah, who knew me by name, was smiling, waiting for the beep. Behind me stood Mike, my lead carpenter. He was shifting his weight, looking at his watch. We had a schedule. The truck was idling outside, ready to load 2,000 square feet of premium grade A teak wood. This was not cheap pine. This was the kind of wood you put on a yacht. It was $4,500 of timber destined for the back deck of my son Jason's house. Jason had been complaining for months that the old deck was unsafe for my grandson. He said he wanted a place where the family could gather for summer barbecues. He said he wanted a place where I could sit in my rocking chair and watch the sunset over the sound. I believed him. I always believed him. That is the curse of being a father who remembers holding his son when he was small enough to fit in one arm. You forget that they grow up, and sometimes they grow up into strangers. My phone buzzed in the breast pocket of my flannel shirt. I pulled it out thinking it might be Jason asking if we were on our way. I adjusted my reading glasses. The screen was bright under the harsh fluorescent lights of the warehouse. It was indeed a message from Jason. But it was not asking about the wood. It was a group message, but I think he meant to send it only to his wife, Mia. "Dad, this cruise is just for us three. Mia says you are too old. Walking around the ship with you would be a hassle, and honestly, we need space. Family only. Sorry, but we are leaving you off the manifest." I stared at the phone. The words blurred for a second, not from tears, but from a sudden spike in my blood pressure. I felt a physical thud in my chest, like a hammer hitting a framing stud. Family only. The phrase echoed in my ears. I looked at the credit card machine. The screen said, "Processing." The little dots were moving across the screen. In that split second, my entire relationship with my son flashed before my eyes, not as a movie, but as a ledger. A balance sheet. I saw the tuition payments. I saw the car down payments. I saw the time I bailed him out of credit card debt when he was 25. And I saw the signature I had put on a document just 6 months ago. The machine beeped. Approved. Please remove card. Sarah, the cashier, smiled and reached for the receipt printer. "Void it," I said. My voice sounded strange. It was low and rough, like gravel mixing in a cement truck. Sarah paused, her hand hovering over the paper. "Excuse me, Mr. Carter?" she asked, her smile faltering. I reached out and snatched my credit card from the machine. My grip was tight. My knuckles were white. I said, "Void the transaction. Cancel the order, now." Mike the carpenter stepped forward. He looked confused. "Bill, what are you talking about? The guys are already at Jason's house. They just finished demoing the old deck. The joists are exposed. We need this wood to cover it up before the rain starts tonight." I turned to Mike. We had worked together for 15 years. He knew me as a man of my word, a man who never left a job unfinished. But the man looking back at him now was not a contractor. He was a creditor who had just realized his borrower was bankrupt of any morality. "Call them Mike," I said, my voice steady and cold. Tell them to pack up their tools. Tell them to leave the debris where it is." "Bill, you cannot do that," Mike argued, his voice rising. "You leave a deck open in Seattle weather and water will get into the foundation. It will rot the rim joist. It could cause thousands in damage to the structure." I looked Mike dead in the eye. I felt a calm rage settling over me. It was a cold sensation like ice water in my veins. "It is not my house, Mike, and it is not my problem." I looked back at Sarah. She was typing furiously on her keyboard, her face pale. "Transaction voided." "Mr. Carter," she whispered, handing me the slip. I took the piece of paper. It was just a small strip of thermal paper, but it felt heavier than the lumber. It was the first time in 10 years I had said no to Jason, and it felt intoxicating. I walked out of the store without looking back. The automatic doors slid open, and the cold, damp Seattle air hit my face. It usually made my joints ache, but today I did not feel the pain. I felt adrenaline. I climbed into my Ford F-250. It was an older truck, pristine condition, just like everything I owned. I sat there for a moment with the engine off, listening to the rain drum against the roof. I looked at the text message again. Family only. So I was not family. I was the financier. I was the wallet. I was the safety net. But I was not family. I started the truck and pulled out of the parking lot. I did not turn left toward my house. I turned right toward the highway. I needed to see it. I needed to see the house that I was supposedly not welcome in. As I drove, the windshield wipers slapping a steady rhythm, memories I had suppressed began to surface. I remembered the day 6 months ago in the bank office. Jason and Mia had been sitting across from the loan officer, looking like terrified children. They were about to lose the house. Jason had lost his job in tech sales, and Mia's spending habits had not adjusted to the new reality. They had missed 3 mortgage payments. The bank was threatening foreclosure. They had called me crying. Not asking for advice, but asking for a rescue. "Dad, we just need a co-signer," Jason had pleaded. "Just to refinance. I have a new job lined up. I will pay the mortgage. We just need your credit score to get the lower rate." I remembered the loan officer, a sharp woman named Mrs. Patterson, looking at me over her glasses. She had warned me. "Mr. Carter," she had said, "co-signing is not just a character reference. You are 100% liable for this debt. If they miss a payment, the bank comes after you. If they default, we take your assets." I had looked at Jason. He had tears in his eyes. I looked at my granddaughter, who was sleeping in her carrier. And I signed. I put my name, my perfect 800 credit score, and my financial future on the line for a $150,000 mortgage. And now, 6 months later, they were going on a luxury cruise. A cruise they claimed was family only. I merged onto the interstate. The traffic was heavy, but I navigated it with aggressive precision. My mind was working faster than the engine. If they could afford a cruise to the Bahamas, they could afford to fix their own deck. But that was just the surface. The math did not add up. Jason had told me last week he was still tight on cash. He had asked me to cover the car insurance for his SUV. He said he was waiting for a commission check. If he was waiting for a commission check, how was he paying for 3 tickets on a premium cruise line? The realization hit me harder than the text message. They were not just excluding me. They were using my money to do it. I pulled up to the house 20 minutes later. It was a nice place, a split-level Craftsman in a good neighborhood. I had personally inspected the foundation before they bought it 5 years ago. I had installed the new windows myself to save them labor costs. I parked down the street. I saw Mike's crew packing up their truck. The back of the house was a mess. The old rotting deck planks were piled up in the yard. The sliding glass door led out to a 4-foot drop into the mud. It looked like a construction war zone. Good, I thought. Let them live in the mud. I watched as Mike's truck drove away. The house was quiet. Jason's car was in the driveway. which meant he was home, probably hiding inside, avoiding the rain, avoiding work. I did not go to the door. I did not want to see him. If I saw him right now, I might do something that would land me in jail, and I needed to be smart. I needed to be surgical. I took out my phone and opened my banking app. I had access to the mortgage account because I was the co-signer. I logged in. My hands were steady now. I scrolled through the transaction history. I saw the payments. They were late often, but paid. But then I saw something else. A draw on the home equity line of credit. A HELOC. When we refinanced the house 6 months ago, the bank had opened a line of credit against the equity. It was supposed to be for emergencies, for roof repairs, for medical bills. There was a withdrawal from 3 days ago, $25,000. $25,000 transferred to a travel agency. I sat in my truck and let out a laugh that had no humor in it. It was a dry, dark sound. They had used the equity in the house, equity that was only there because I had saved it, equity that was secured by my name to pay for a vacation I was explicitly banned from. They were partying on my credit. I looked at the house again. It did not look like a home anymore. It looked like a liability. I thought about Mia, my daughter-in-law. She was a woman who always had a smile for me when she needed something, and a headache when I came over just to visit. Too old, she had said. Slow them down. I was 70 years old, yes. I had arthritis in my knees, yes. But I still woke up at 5 in the morning. I still managed my own rental properties. I still had a mind that could calculate load-bearing ratios in seconds. And I knew exactly how to dismantle a house without swinging a hammer. I put the truck in gear and pulled away from the curb. I was not going home. I was going to see the only person in this city who was colder than I was right now, my lawyer Leonard Blackwood. I drove toward the city center. The rain was coming down harder now, washing away the dust of the day, but it could not wash away the disgust I felt. Most fathers would be heartbroken. They would go home and cry. They would wonder where they went wrong. They would send a text asking why. They would beg to be included. I was past heartbreak. I was in the realm of consequences. You see, in the construction business, if a client stops paying, you do not keep building. You do not beg them to pay. You file a lien. You stop the work. You secure the site. Jason and Mia had just stopped paying the rent on my respect, so I was about to file a lien on their entire existence. I arrived at Leonard's office tower. I parked the truck next to the BMWs and Mercedes. I walked into the lobby, my work boots squeaking on the marble floor. I did not care. I had money in the bank and a mission in my mind. The receptionist looked up. "Mr. Carter, do you have an appointment?" "Tell Leonard I am here," I said. "Tell him I want to foreclose on a mortgage." She blinked. "Foreclose. But aren't you retired from lending, Mr. Carter?" I leaned on the desk. "I am unretiring, just for today." I sat down in the leather chair in the waiting room. I pulled out my phone again. I did not reply to Jason. Silence is a weapon if you use it right. Let him think I never saw the text. Let him think I am just a confused old man who forgot to check his phone. Let him think he got away with it. I opened my photo gallery. I scrolled past pictures of my grandson. Past pictures of the last Christmas where I bought them all new iPads. I found the photo I took of the loan documents 6 months ago. I zoomed in on the fine print. Clause 14, Section B. The clause about material misrepresentation of income. I remembered something Jason had said to the loan officer. He had claimed he was making $120,000 a year. He had shown pay stubs, but I knew for a fact he had been unemployed for 3 months before that. I had been giving him $4,000 a month in cash to help with bills. He had deposited that cash and called it consulting income on the application. At the time, I stayed quiet. I wanted him to get the loan. I wanted him to be safe. Now that silence was over. That was mortgage fraud. And since I was the co-signer, I had a duty to report it, or I would be complicit. If I reported it, the bank would not just be angry. They would call the loan. That means they would demand the entire $150,000 immediately. They would lose the house. I looked at the picture of the document. Then I looked at the text message from Jason one more time. Family only. Okay, son, I thought. You want to play family? Let me show you how the head of the family handles business. Leonard's door opened. He stood there in his three-piece suit, looking sharp and dangerous. Bill, he said, you look like you are ready to kill someone. Not kill Leonard, I said, standing up. Just evict. I walked into his office and the door clicked shut behind me, sealing the fate of my son's vacation and his home. The teak wood was back at the store, but the real demolition was just beginning. I stood outside the lawyer's building for a moment, letting the cold Seattle rain run down the back of my neck. I had the legal documents in my hand, but my gut was twisting. A lawyer can file paperwork, but he cannot give you the truth. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. I needed to know how deep the rot went before I tore the whole structure down. I needed to see them. So I got back in my truck and drove to the house I had built with my own hands. I parked 3 blocks away. I did not want them to see my truck. It was a distinctive vehicle, a dark blue Ford that Jason knew better than his own car. I pulled the hood of my rain jacket up and walked. The neighborhood was quiet. It was the middle of a Tuesday workday, but I knew Jason was home. He was always home. I walked past the manicured lawns of the neighbors. I remembered installing the drainage systems for half this street. I knew which basements flooded and which driveways cracked. But the house at the end of the cul-de-sac was my masterpiece. Or it was supposed to be. I approached from the alleyway. The fence was 6 feet high cedar planks that I had cut and stained myself 3 summers ago. I found the loose board near the rhododendron bush. It looked solid from the outside, but if you pushed on the bottom left corner, it swung inward on a hidden hinge. I built it that way so I could get into the yard to check the meter without walking through the house. Jason probably did not even know it existed. I slipped through the gap and clicked the board back into place. I was in the backyard. It was a disaster. The contractors I had fired an hour ago had left a tarp flapping in the wind over the exposed deck framing. Tools were scattered in the mud. It made my skin crawl. A good contractor cleans his site, but I had told them to leave. This chaos was my doing. I stepped over a pile of wet sawdust and moved toward the back door. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I was breaking into my son's house. Technically, my name was on the deed, so I was breaking into my own house, but it felt like a crime. I felt like a thief. I pressed my back against the siding. Hardy plank lap siding. I remembered the day we installed it. It was 90 degrees. Jason was supposed to help, but he had called in sick with a hangover. I did it alone. I nailed every single board while he slept off a night of partying. I should have seen the signs then. You do not build a future for someone who is too busy sleeping through the present. I reached the back door. It was a solid core oak door with a reinforced frame. I knew it was reinforced because I had framed the rough opening myself. I had used 3-inch screws in the strike plate to prevent kick-ins. I wanted them to be safe. I wanted my granddaughter to be safe. Now that same security measure was an obstacle. I did not ring the bell. I did not knock. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my key ring. I had a copy of every key for every property I owned, but I did not use the main key. I knew Jason. He might have changed the deadbolt if he was trying to hide something, but he would never think to change the handle lock on the mudroom door. He was lazy. He relied on the electronic keypad on the front door. I slid the small brass key into the knob. It stuck. It always stuck. When I installed this lock set 5 years ago, the internal tumbler had a burr in it. I could have replaced it, but I just learned the trick. You have to pull the key back a hair's breadth and jiggle it to the left. I did it now. My hand was shaking. I took a deep breath. Pull back. Jiggle left. Turn. The lock clicked. It was a sound louder than a gunshot in the silence of the rain. I turned the knob and pushed. The door groaned. The hinges needed oil. I made a mental note to fix that. Then I remembered I was not here to fix anything. I was here to demolish. I slipped inside and closed the door softly behind me until the latch engaged. I was in the mudroom. The air inside was warm and smelled of expensive vanilla candles masking the scent of stale garbage. There were shoes everywhere. Expensive sneakers, designer boots, a pair of muddy running shoes that looked brand new tossed in the corner. I looked at the floor. It was slate tile. I had laid this tile on my knees for 3 days because Mia wanted a rustic look. I remembered my knees swelling up after that job. I remembered Mia walking in when I was finished and saying it looked okay, but the grout was a shade too dark. I had apologized. I had apologized for the color of the grout while she stood there in shoes that cost more than my weekly food budget. I took off my wet boots. I did not want to leave tracks. I moved into the kitchen in my socks. The house was quiet, but it was not empty. I could feel the presence of people. I could hear the low hum of the refrigerator, a Viking Professional series that I'd paid for as a housewarming gift. $6,000 to keep their almond milk cold. I saw a stack of mail on the granite island. I should not have looked, but I did. I was looking for evidence. I was looking for a reason to turn back, or a reason to burn it all down. The top envelope was from the bank. Final notice. Past due. I frowned. I checked the mortgage account online, and the payments were current. I flipped the envelope over. It was not the mortgage. It was a credit card bill. A store credit card for a high-end furniture shop. I picked up the next one. A collection agency notice for a medical bill. The next one was a lease payment notice for a BMW. They were drowning. I stood there in the kitchen of the house I had secured with my life's savings, holding the evidence of their financial ruin. They were broke. They were defaulting on everything. And yet they were going on a cruise they had paid for by draining the equity from this house. I put the mail down exactly as I found it. My hands were cold. I felt a wave of nausea. It was not just greed. It was stupidity. They were burning the furniture to heat the house, and now they wanted to set fire to the roof too. I heard a noise, a laugh. It came from the basement. The basement was finished. I knew that because I finished it. I had framed the walls, hung the drywall, taped, sanded, and painted it. I had installed the wet bar. I had run the electrical for the home theater system. It was supposed to be a playroom for my granddaughter. I crept toward the basement door. It was ajar. Light was spilling out from the stairwell. The laughter came again. It was Mia. It was a high, shrill sound that used to make me smile because I thought it meant my son was happy. Now it sounded like a cash register ringing. I stepped onto the first stair. The carpet was thick, plush wool. Another upgrade I paid for. I moved down one step at a time. I knew which steps squeaked. The third one from the top. The seventh one. I stepped over them. I moved like a ghost in the house I had built. I reached the landing. The door to the media room was open. I pressed myself against the wall in the hallway. I was close enough to smell the popcorn. "I hear you, Daddy," Mia said. Her voice was teasing. I froze. Was she talking to me? Had I been caught, then I heard a man's voice. It was deep, booming, and unfamiliar. "Don't worry, sweetie. Jason's got it handled. The kid knows how to work the system." I peered around the corner just an inch. There were 3 people sitting on the leather sectional sofa I had helped carry down these narrow stairs. Mia was in the middle. On her left was Jason, my son. On her right was a man I recognized from the wedding photos but had rarely seen in person. It was Robert Thompson, Mia's father. And sitting in the recliner next to them with a glass of wine in her hand was her mother, Susan. They were all there, the whole family. The family that fit the definition of family only. Jason was holding a remote control, scrolling through the menu on the 80-inch TV screen. "I don't know, Jason," Robert said, taking a handful of popcorn. "$25,000 is a lot for a boat ride. Are you sure you can swing it? I thought you said the old man was tightening the purse strings." I held my breath. I waited for my son to defend me. I waited for him to say that I was generous, that I had done enough. Jason laughed. It was a weak, nervous sound. "Don't worry about Bill," he said. "He calls me Bill, not Dad." "Bill. He's old school," Jason continued. "He doesn't check statements. He just signs things. I told him the HELOC draw was for emergency roof repairs. He bought it hook, line, and sinker." Mia giggled. "He would believe anything if you tell him it's for the house. He's obsessed with this place. It's sad, really. He thinks he's building a legacy, but he's just building our retirement fund." I felt my knees buckle. I had to put a hand on the wall to steady myself. The drywall felt cool and smooth under my palm. I had sanded this wall until my shoulders burned so it would be perfect for them. Susan, the mother-in-law, chimed in. "Well, I think it's sweet of him to pay for our anniversary trip, even if he doesn't know he's invited in spirit, right?" They all laughed. They toasted with wine glasses that were likely filled with the vintage I had paid for. "So the plan is solid?" Robert asked. "We fly out Friday." "Friday morning," Jason confirmed. "First class. I put the flights on the Amex. Bill added me as an authorized user years ago for emergencies. I figure a mental health break counts as an emergency, right?" Mia leaned her head on Jason's shoulder. "You're such a good provider, baby. I knew you'd figure it out. I just couldn't stand the thought of dragging your dad along. He's so dusty. He smells like sawdust and Old Spice. It ruins the vibe. Dusty." I looked down at my hands. They were calloused. There was dirt under my fingernails from working on my own truck that morning. I smelled like sawdust because I had been buying wood for their deck. I was the dust they wanted to sweep away. I backed up the stairs, one step at a time. My heart was not hammering anymore. It had stopped. It felt like a stone in my chest, cold and hard. I reached the kitchen. I did not scream. I did not go down there and confront them. That would be too easy. That would give them a chance to lie, to make excuses, to say they were joking. I wanted them to feel the full weight of their choices. I wanted them to be on that dock with their luggage waiting for a ship that would never come. I wanted them to return to a house that was locked. I walked out the back door. The rain was pouring down now. I did not lock the door behind me. It did not matter. I walked through the mud. I walked through the debris of the deck I had canceled. I walked back to the loose board in the fence. As I slipped through to the alley, I looked back at the house one last time. The windows were glowing with warm light. It looked like a postcard of the American dream. But I knew the truth. It was a house of cards. And I had just pulled the ace. I walked back to my truck. The rain mixed with the tears on my face, but I did not wipe them away. I let them fall. They were the last tears I would shed for Jason Carter. I got into the truck and started the engine. I picked up my phone. I saw the text message again. Family only. I drove toward Leonard's office. The drive was a blur. I did not see the traffic. I did not see the city. I only saw the path forward. I had built that house from the ground up. I knew every nail, every wire, every pipe, and I knew exactly how to dismantle it. Not with a wrecking ball, but with a signature. I was going to give them exactly what they wanted. A life without me. A life without my dust. Without my sawdust. and without my money. Let's see how much they enjoy the vibe when they are living in a one-bedroom apartment paying for their own Wi-Fi. I pulled into the parking garage. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. The sad old father was gone. The contractor was back, and I had a demolition order to file. I remained frozen in the shadow of the hallway, my shoulder pressed against the drywall I had hung myself 5 years ago. The laughter from the media room washed over me like toxic sludge. It was not the warm sound of family bonding. It was the sound of conspirators celebrating a heist. I could see them through the crack in the doorframe. My son Jason was leaning back on the leather sofa, one arm draped casually over the backrest, the other holding a glass of wine. Mia sat next to him, her legs tucked under her, looking at her parents, with a beam of pride I had never seen directed at me. Robert Thompson. Mia's father cleared his throat. He was a man who wore ascots on Tuesdays and spoke with a fake mid-Atlantic accent despite having grown up in New Jersey. He swirled his wine glass. "So Jason," he said, his voice booming with self-importance, "walk me through the financing again. This cruise line is top tier. The Royal Suite alone must be 15 grand. Plus the flights. Plus the excursions. I know you said business was picking up, but this is a serious outlay of capital." I watched Jason. I watched my son, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the man I had bailed out of debt 3 times, shift in his seat. He took a long sip of wine. "It is handled," Robert, Jason said with a confident smirk that made my stomach turn. "You know that home equity line of credit the bank opened when we refinanced 6 months ago? The one Bill insisted on for emergencies." Robert nodded. "The HELOC. Right. Smart tool if you have the equity." Jason chuckled. "Well, we have plenty of equity thanks to the down payment Bill put up originally and the market appreciation." The line was sitting there unused. It felt like a waste. Mia and I decided that our mental health is an emergency. We pulled $30,000 out on Monday. I felt the blood drain from my face. $30,000. They had maxed out the emergency line. That money was intended for a new roof if the winter storms were bad. It was meant for a furnace replacement. It was the safety net I had insisted on to protect the asset, to protect my investment. And they had liquidated it for a week of buffets and suntans. "But it is not technically your debt, is it?" Susan, Mia's mother, asked. She was picking at a tray of expensive cheese. "I mean, since Bill is the primary co-signer, does that not impact his credit utilization more than yours?" Mia laughed. "That is the beauty of it, Mom. Bill has perfect credit. He has so many assets that a $30,000 draw does not even dent his score. He will probably just see the statement, assume it was for house repairs, and pay the interest like he always does. He is on autopilot. As long as we keep the principal balance below the red line, he will never ask questions. He trusts Jason too much." She said it with such casual cruelty. He trusts Jason too much. It was not a compliment. It was an assessment of a weakness to be exploited. I gripped the doorframe so hard I thought the wood might splinter under my fingers. They were banking on my love. They were leveraging my fatherly instinct to protect them as a financial instrument to fund their lifestyle. But the conversation did not stop there. It shifted, and the subject became me. "You know," Robert said, popping a grape into his mouth, "it is a shame Bill could not come. I mean, not really, but it would have been the polite thing to offer. He is alone after all." Mia scoffed. She set her wineglass down on the coffee table hard. "Oh, please, Dad. Can you imagine Bill on a luxury cruise? He would show up to the formal dinner in flannel and work boots. He would complain about the price of the cocktails. He would spend the whole time inspecting the ship's joinery and telling the captain how he would have built it better. He is an embarrassment." Jason did not defend me. He did not say that I had built this room they were sitting in. He did not say that my flannel shirts were clean and my boots were honest. He just nodded. "Yeah, he's getting worse," Jason said. He is becoming this grumpy old hermit. He comes over here and starts looking at the baseboards, checking for dust. He judges everything we buy. It is exhausting. I just want a week where I do not have to feel like I am being audited by a contractor. I want to relax with people who understand culture. People who know how to enjoy the finer things. He raised his glass to Robert and Susan. To family, he said. To the real family. The real family. The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. I looked at Robert and Susan. They had never contributed a dime to this house. They had never fixed a leak. They had never mowed the lawn. They showed up for the holidays, drank the good wine, and left. And they were the real family. I was just the staff, the maintenance man, the bank. I wanted to storm in there. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to scream until my throat bled. But I stayed still. I forced my breathing to slow down. Rage is a fire, but revenge is a structure. You have to build it brick by brick, and to build it, I needed more material. I needed the structural failure point. And then Jason gave it to me. He pulled a folder out from under the coffee table. He tossed it to Robert. "Check this out," Jason said. "The bank finally sent the copies of the closing docs from the refinance. I wanted to double-check the interest rate lock before we leave." Robert opened the folder. He adjusted his reading glasses. He scanned the pages. "Impressive," he muttered. 150,000. And you got a 3.5% rate. That is unheard of with your credit history, Jason. No offense. None taken, Jason said. That is the magic of Bill Carter. His score is 820. But here is the kicker. Look at the income verification page. Robert flipped the page. He squinted. Wait a minute. It says here, your annual income is 140,000. Consulting fees. Jason. I thought you were between jobs when you signed this. I thought you were doing some freelance work, but nothing at this level. Jason laughed again. That was the risky part. I was unemployed. I had zero income. But Bill, good old Bill, he had been giving me $4,000 a month in cash to help with bills while I looked for work. I took that cash, deposited it into my business account, and generated fake invoices to myself. I annualized it and called it consulting income. Robert looked up, his eyes wide. Is that legal? Jason shrugged. It is gray area. The bank officer did not look too closely because Bill's name was on the top line. They saw his assets, they saw his history, and they rubber-stamped it. If I had applied a loan, they would have laughed me out of the building. Bill's reputation was the shield. I just slipped my little lie in behind it. Mia chimed in, stroking Jason's arm. It was brilliant, really. We got the house saved, we got the renovation money, and now we have the vacation money. And Bill thinks he is just helping his struggling son get back on his feet. He has no idea he basically co-signed a loan based on phantom income. Susan giggled. It sounds like fraud, dear. It is only fraud if you default, Jason said, dismissing her concern. And we won't default. As long as Bill keeps paying the insurance and the taxes and helping with the odd bill, we can make the minimum payments. We just ride his coattails until he kicks the bucket. Then the house is ours free and clear, and the insurance policy pays off the mortgage. It is a waiting game. I stopped breathing. The air in the stairwell felt suddenly thin. They had not just used my credit. They had committed a felony. Mortgage fraud. Inflating income on a federal loan application. And they had used my name, my stellar reputation, as the cover for their crime. If the bank found out, the loan would be called immediately. It is called the acceleration clause. Fraud is a default event. And Jason had just admitted it. He had bragged about it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I had set it to record when I walked down the stairs just in case. I checked the screen. The red timer was ticking. 6 minutes and 40 seconds. I had it all. The confession of the HELOC theft. The admission of the income fabrication. The explicit statement that they were waiting for me to die. I pressed stop. My thumb was shaking not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of the betrayal. It was absolute. It was total. There was no coming back from this. I looked at them one last time. They were happy. They were clinking glasses. They were planning their shore excursions in Nassau. They looked like a successful, happy family. It was all a mirage. A facade built on a foundation of my money and my lies. I turned around slowly. I placed my feet carefully on the treads of the stairs. I did not want a squeak to give me away. I did not want a confrontation. A confrontation would give them a chance to beg. It would give them a chance to play the victim. I wanted to be a ghost. I wanted to disappear from their lives so completely that the vacuum would collapse their entire world. I reached the kitchen. It was still quiet. The refrigerator hummed. The unpaid bills sat on the counter. I walked to the back door. I opened it and stepped out into the rain. The cold water felt like a baptism. I was washing away the father I had been. The father who excused. The father who enabled. The father who hoped. That man was dead. He died in that basement. The man walking to the truck was different. He was a general contractor who had just discovered a terminal structural flaw in the building. And he knew there was only one remedy: condemnation. I climbed into my truck. I did not slam the door. I turned the key and the engine rumbled to life. I did not turn on the headlights until I was down the street. I drove through the rain, my mind clear and sharp. I had the recording. I had the knowledge of the HELOC draw. I knew about the falsified income. I was not just going to remove my name from the mortgage. That was impossible now. The loan was already funded. I was going to do something much more final. I was going to report the fraud. I was going to turn myself in as the co-signer who had discovered discrepancies. I would claim ignorance of his income fabrication. I would show them the bank statements proving the income was actually my gifts. The bank would have no choice. They would call the note. They would demand the full $150,000 within 30 days. Jason did not have 30 days. He did not have $30. He would lose the house. He would lose his credit rating. He would face a potential federal investigation. And the best part. The absolute best part. I pulled up to a red light and looked at the digital clock on the dashboard. It was 2 p.m. The cruise refund deadline was 48 hours away. If I acted fast, if I moved with the speed of a man who has nothing left to lose, I could ensure that when they returned from their trip, they would not be coming back to a home. They would be coming back to a padlock on the door. But wait. Why wait for them to return? I smiled. A grim, tight smile in the rearview mirror. I picked up my phone and dialed Leonard's number again. "Leonard," I said when he answered. "Change of plans. I don't just want to foreclose. I want to meet with the bank's fraud department. Today. And Leonard, call the travel agency. I need to know the cancellation policy for a cruise booked on a card where I am the primary account holder." There was a pause on the line. Then Leonard's voice came through, filled with professional admiration. "Bill, you are scorching the earth." "No, Leonard," I said, pulling onto the highway. "I am just clearing the lot. I have some trash to remove." I walked into Leonard Blackwood's office without knocking. The receptionist, a young woman who had seen me come and go for 20 years, regarding property deeds and liability waivers, started to stand up, but saw the look on my face and sat back down. She knew better. I pushed open the heavy mahogany door. Leonard was on the phone staring out the window at the Seattle skyline. He saw me in the reflection of the glass. He did not smile. He did not wave. He told the person on the other end of the line that he had to go and hung up. Leonard was the kind of lawyer who charged $600 an hour to tell you that you were wrong. Today, I was going to pay him to tell me I was right. I sat down in the leather chair opposite his desk. I did not take off my coat. I did not take off my hat. I placed my phone on the desk between us. "I need you to listen to something, Leonard," I said. I pressed play. The audio from the basement filled the room. The sound quality was surprisingly clear. Mia's laughter, Robert's pompous voice, and then Jason, and then my son, confessing to mortgage fraud, confessing to the HELOC theft, confessing that he was just waiting for me to die. Leonard listened. He leaned back in his chair, steeping his fingers. He was a man who had heard everything. He had handled divorces where spouses hid millions in offshore accounts. He had handled corporate hostile takeover shows. But as Jason's voice detailed the fabrication of the consulting invoices, Leonard's eyebrows went up. When the recording finished, silence hung in the room like smoke. "That is quite a recording," Bill Leonard said finally. "Admissible in civil court. Problematic in criminal court, depending on privacy laws, but definitely enough to start a war. What do you want to do? Do you want to sue him for the $30,000? I shook my head. "Suing takes too long, Leonard. Civil suits drag on for years. I do not want a judgment in 2 years. I want a consequence today." "Then what?" Leonard asked. I reached into my inside pocket and pulled out a stack of papers. They were folded and worn. I smoothed them out on the desk. They were bank statements. My bank statements. And Jason's bank statements, which I had access to because I was the co-signer. "I want you to draft a formal letter to the mortgage lender," I said. "I want you to inform them that as the co-signer on the loan I have become aware of material misrepresentations made by the primary borrower during the application process." Leonard froze. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing. "Bill, do you know what you are asking? If you report fraud on a loan you signed, you are implicating yourself. You signed that application too. You attested that the information was true." I pointed to the paper. "Look at the dates, Leonard. I signed based on the documents Jason provided. He showed me fake invoices. He showed me a profit and loss statement for a consulting business that does not exist. I signed in good faith. He signed with intent to deceive. I am the whistleblower here, not the accomplice." Leonard picked up the statements. He scanned the highlighted lines. The cash deposits. $4,000. $4,000. Every month. "These are the gifts you gave him," Leonard noted. "Correct," I said. "But on his application he listed them as recurring consulting revenue. That is fraud, Leonard. That is falsifying income to a federally insured lender. And I have the recording of him admitting it." Leonard put the papers down. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Okay, Bill. Let's say the bank believes you were duped. Let's say they clear you of conspiracy. Do you know what they will do? They won't just slap his wrist. They will trigger the acceleration clause." The acceleration clause. I savored the words. It was the most powerful phrase in a mortgage contract. It meant that if the borrower breaks the terms of the agreement specifically by committing fraud, the lender has the right to demand the entire unpaid balance of the loan immediately. Not next month. Not over 30 years. Now. "I know exactly what it means," I said. "It means Jason has to come up with $150,000 plus the $30,000 he stole from the HELOC within 30 days or they foreclose." Leonard looked at me with a mixture of horror and professional respect. "He doesn't have that kind of money, Bill. He will lose the house." "I know," I said. "That is the point." Leonard leaned forward. "Bill, this is nuclear. This is scorched earth. You are talking about making your son and your grandchild homeless. You are talking about destroying his credit score for a decade. He will never be able to buy a car, let alone a house again. I looked Leonard in the eye. I did not blink. He is already homeless, Leonard. He just doesn't know it yet. He is living in a house he cannot afford, paid for by a father. He does not respect, funded by fraud, he thinks is clever. It is a fake life. I am just popping the bubble, but the grandchild Leonard pressed. I have a trust fund for her, I said. She will be fine. I will make sure she has a roof over her head. But it won't be that roof. And it won't be with her father living like a king on my dime. Leonard sighed. He picked up a pen. Okay. You want me to send the letter? We report the income discrepancy. We advise the bank that you are withdrawing your guarantee due to the discovery of fraud. The bank will investigate. They will audit his accounts. They will see the pattern. They will call the note. Exactly, I said. But I want it done today. I want the courier to deliver it to the bank's fraud department this afternoon. I want the clock to start ticking before he even gets on that plane. Leonard made a note on his legal pad. Done. Is that it? No, I said. There is one more thing. I pulled another set of keys out of my pocket. They were the spare keys to the Ford Explorer Jason drove. It was a black SUV, fully loaded leather seats, premium sound system. He loved that car. He washed it every Saturday. He drove it to his fake consulting meetings. I bought that car, I said. The title is in my name. I let him drive it because he said he needed a safe vehicle for the baby. I pay the insurance. I pay the registration. I know, Leonard said. I handled the purchase paperwork 3 years ago. I want it back, I said. Leonard nodded slowly. Okay. We can send him a demand letter asking for the return of the property. We can give him a week to... No, I interrupted. No letters. No warnings. I looked at the keys in my hand. He is at home right now packing for his cruise. The car is in the driveway. I want you to call a repossession company. Or better yet, call a tow truck. Tell them the owner lost his keys and needs the vehicle transported to a secure location. My warehouse in the industrial district. Leonard looked stunned. Bill, you can't just tow his car out of his driveway while he is home. That is aggressive. It is my car, Leonard. I can park it wherever I want. And right now I want it parked behind a locked gate where he can't reach it. But he needs it to get to the airport, Leonard argued. He leaves on Friday. I leaned back in the chair. He can take an Uber. Or maybe his father-in-law can give him a ride in his imaginary limousine. Leonard stared at me for a long moment. He was looking for the man he used to know. The man who was patient. The man who forgave. He did not find him. You have changed, Bill, Leonard said softly. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the rain. I haven't changed, Leonard. I just woke up. For 40 years, I built things. I built houses. I built a business. I tried to build a family. But you can't build on a rotten foundation. You have to tear it out. You have to dig it up. And you have to start over. I turned back to him. Do it, Leonard. Send the letter to the bank. Call the tow truck. And send the bill to my personal account. Not the business account. This is personal. Leonard nodded. He picked up his phone. He dialed a number. I listened as he gave the instructions. I listened as he ordered the destruction of my son's financial life. It sounded like business. It sounded like justice. When he hung up, he looked at me. The tow truck will be there in an hour. The letter will be at the bank by 5 p.m. By tomorrow morning, the foreclosure process will be triggered internally at the bank. They move fast when they smell fraud. Good, I said. I walked to the door. Bill, Leonard called out. I stopped my hand on the brass handle. What happens when he calls you? Leonard asked. When the car disappears. When the bank calls. He is going to call you screaming. I smiled. A cold, humorless smile. He can't call me Leonard. Why not? Because I am going to the phone store right now. I am changing my number. And then, I am going on a trip. Where are you going? I am going to check on an investment, I said. A cruise. I hear the Bahamas are nice this time of year. I walked out of the office. The receptionist smiled at me as I left. Have a nice day, Mr. Carter, she said. I looked at her. I am going to try, I said. I went down to the parking garage. I got into my truck. I checked the time. It was 3:30. The tow truck would be arriving at Jason's house at 4:30. I imagined the scene. Jason would be in the living room probably bragging to his friends on the phone about the trip. He would hear the rumble of the diesel engine. He would look out the window. He would see the hook attaching to the bumper of his pride and joy. He would run out in his socks. He would scream. He would wave his arms. The driver would ignore him. He would check the VN. He would see it matched the order from the legal owner, William Carter. He would lift it up. Jason would try to call me. He would get a disconnected message. He would call the police. The police would run the plates. They would tell him it is a civil matter and that the car belongs to his father. He would be standing there in the rain, watching his status symbol disappear down the street. And that would just be the appetizer. The main course would arrive in the mail in 2 days. The foreclosure notice. The acceleration demand. I started my truck. I felt lighter than I had in years. The burden of supporting a grown man was gone. The weight of his lies was gone. I drove out of the garage and into the city traffic. I had one more stop to make. The travel agency. Because there was one detail Jason had mentioned in that basement that he thought was a victory, but was actually his fatal mistake. He had booked the cruise on my American Express card. He was an authorized user, yes. That meant he could spend. But it did not mean he owned the account. I was the primary account holder. I owned the points. I owned the transaction history. And I owned the reservation. I could not refund the tickets. It was too late for that. But I could change the names on the manifest. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on the back of my card. Platinum Concierge. How may I help you, Mr. Carter? The voice on the line asked. Smooth. Professional. Hi, I said. I have a travel reservation booked on my card for this Friday. A cruise. I need to make some changes to the passenger list. Certainly, sir. What changes would you like to make? Well, I said, merging onto the highway. It seems my son and his wife can no longer make it. Something about a housing crisis. So I will be taking their place. Me and 3 of my oldest friends. I paused. And make sure we are in the royal suite. I hear it is very nice. I hung up the phone. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking. A shaft of sunlight hit the wet pavement ahead of me. It looked like a good day for a drive. And it looked like a perfect day for justice. I sat in my truck across the street from the Nexus, the glass-walled co-working space where Jason rented a desk for appearances. He called it his headquarters. I called it a daycare for unemployed men in suits. He paid $500 a month to sit there and pretend he was a high-powered consultant, drinking free espresso and networking with other people who had business cards but no business. I checked my watch. It was 2:45 in the afternoon. The rain had paused, leaving the asphalt slick and black. The black Ford Explorer was parked right in the front row in a spot reserved for executive members. It looked aggressive and expensive shining under the gray sky. It was the only thing about Jason that looked successful, and it belonged to me. I had paid the $50,000 for it. I paid the insurance. I paid the registration. I had let him drive it because he gave me a sob story about needing a safe car for my granddaughter's car seat. Now it was just another asset I was liquidating. I saw the tow truck turn the corner. It was a heavy-duty flatbed from Big Al's Towing. Al was a man I had done business with for 30 years. He didn't ask questions when Bill Carter called. He just asked for the address. I watched as the truck backed up to the Explorer. The reverse beeper echoed off the glass building. Beep, beep, beep. It was the sound of reality backing into Jason's fantasy. The driver, a burly kid named Rick, jumped out. He didn't hesitate. He checked the license plate against his clipboard, nodded, and started hooking the chains to the undercarriage. He moved with the efficiency of a repo man, though this was technically a voluntary transport, since I, the owner, had ordered it. Inside the glass building, I saw movement. Heads turned. People in the lobby were pointing. And then I saw Jason. He was standing near the reception desk, laughing with a young woman, probably spinning a yarn about his latest imaginary merger. He glanced out the window. His smile vanished. He dropped his coffee cup. I actually saw it splash onto the floor. He ran for the door. He burst out onto the sidewalk, waving his arms like a man on a sinking ship. "Hey, hey, what are you doing?" he screamed. I could hear him through my open window from across the street. "Get away from my car!" Rick ignored him. He hit the lever, and the hydraulic winch whined. The front end of the Explorer lifted into the air. The tires left the pavement. Jason grabbed the door handle of the truck, trying to pull it open. "Stop! That's my car. I'm calling the police." Rick just pointed at his clipboard and kept winching. The Explorer slid up onto the bed, looking helpless and heavy. My burner phone buzzed on the seat beside me. It was Jason. I let it ring twice. I picked it up on the third ring. I kept my voice calm, flat, the voice of a man who was just running errands. "Hello? Dad, pick up." Jason was hyperventilating. "Someone is stealing the Explorer. I'm at the office. They're taking it right now. You have to call the tracking company. Tell them to kill the engine." "Slow down, son," I said, watching him pace frantically on the sidewalk. "Nobody is stealing the car." "What are you talking about?" "It's on a flatbed. It's leaving the lot. Dad, do something." "I did do something, Jason. I called the truck." There was a silence on the line. A silence so profound, I could hear the traffic passing him by. You called them?" "Yes," I said, leaning back in my seat. "I was looking for my spare set of keys this morning. You know, the ones I keep in the kitchen drawer. I couldn't find them anywhere. And then I remembered you said the electronic fob was acting up last week." "The fob is fine," Jason yelled. "Dad, tell them to put it down. I have clients seeing this. It's humiliating. I can't take chances with security, Jason." I continued, ignoring his outburst. "If those keys are lost, someone could steal the vehicle. It's a liability. Since the title is in my name, I have a responsibility to secure the asset. I'm having it towed to my secure warehouse facility. I'm going to have the dealership rekey the entire ignition system and issue new codes." "Rekey it?" Jason's voice cracked. "Dad, that takes days. I need the car now. I have places to be." "It actually might take a week," I said casually. "Supply chain shortages. You know how it is, but better safe than sorry." "A week?" he was shrieking now. "I don't have a week. I leave on Friday." He stopped. He cut himself off. I smiled. He had almost said it. "I leave on Friday for the cruise." But he couldn't say it. He couldn't tell me he needed the car to drive to the airport for a vacation I was explicitly excluded from. He was trapped in his own lie. "You leave on Friday?" I asked innocently. "For what, another consulting trip?" "Yes." He lied, desperate. "I have a site visit in Portland. I need the SUV to drive there. Dad, please, tell the driver to stop. I'll bring the keys to you later. Just let me have the car." "I can't do that, son," I said. "The work order is already in the system. The dealership is expecting it. Besides, if the keys are compromised, it's not safe to drive. Insurance wouldn't cover it." The keys aren't compromised. You just misplaced them. Dad, stop being so paranoid. It's not paranoia, it's protocol. Look, you're a successful consultant. Just take an Uber. Put it on the corporate card. It's a business expense, right? An Uber. He sounded like I had suggested he walk barefoot over glass. I can't take an Uber to Portland. That would cost hundreds of dollars. Well, you make $140,000 a year, Jason, I said, quoting the fraudulent figure from his loan application. Surely a few $100s for transport isn't a deal-breaker for a man of your means. I watched him. He was red in the face. He was pulling at his collar. People from the co-working space were standing at the windows watching the show. The successful businessman was having a meltdown over a taxi fare. Dad, you don't understand, he hissed, lowering his voice so the onlookers wouldn't hear him begging. I am tight right now. Liquidity is tied up in investments. I need the car. Please don't do this to me today. I'm sorry, Jason. The truck is already moving. I watched as Rick put the truck in gear and pulled out of the lot. The Explorer bobbed slightly on the suspension as it rolled over the curb. It was gone. Dad, I have to go, Jason. I have a lot of paperwork to sort through today. You'd be surprised how much paperwork accumulates when you start looking closely at things. Don't you hang up. If that car leaves, I swear I will. You will what? I asked, my voice dropping an octave, losing the confused old man act for just a split second. You'll sue me for taking my own car. You'll call the police on the legal owner. Go ahead, Jason. Call them. Show them the registration. See whose name is on it. He didn't speak. He stood there, phone pressed to his ear, defeated. Take the Uber, son, I said. Or maybe your father-in-law can lend you his car. He seems like a man who appreciates the finer things. I'm sure he has a spare vehicle for family. I hung up. I watched him stare at the phone. He looked like he wanted to spike it into the pavement. He turned and looked at the empty parking spot. A small oil stain was the only thing left of his status symbol. He looked back at the glass building. He couldn't go back in there. Not after that scene. He had been exposed as a fraud, a man whose daddy had to come take his toys away. He started walking down the street, shoulders slumped in the rain. He didn't call an Uber. He probably couldn't afford one. He walked towards the bus stop. I started my engine. I felt a cold, hard rhythm in my chest. It was the rhythm of a job going according to plan. The car was secured. The first asset was reclaimed. But he was lucky. Walking in the rain was just an inconvenience. What was coming next was a catastrophe. I drove toward the warehouse to meet the tow truck. I wanted to see the car locked behind my gates with my own eyes. I wanted to put the keys in my safe. As I drove, I thought about his panic. He wasn't panicked about the meeting in Portland. He was panicked because he had no way to get his family and their luggage to the airport on Friday without exposing his financial ruin. He couldn't rent a car. His credit cards were maxed out. He couldn't ask me. He was going to have to ask me as parents. He was going to have to admit a weakness to the people he was trying so hard to impress. It was a small crack in the foundation. But winter was coming, and water gets into cracks. And when it freezes, it expands. I pulled into my warehouse yard. Rick was unhooking the Explorer. Thanks, Rick, I said, handing him a $100 bill for the rush job. Put it in the back bay. Block it in with the forklift. Trouble with the kid? Rick asked, noting the grim set of my jaw. No trouble, I said. Just maintenance. Sometimes you have to strip a project down to the studs to see if it's worth saving. I walked over to the SUV. I opened the door with my master key. The interior smelled of Jason's cologne and Mia's perfume. In the back seat there was a brochure for the cruise. Royal Bahama Line, experience the paradise you deserve. I picked it up. I crumbled it in my fist. You don't deserve paradise, Jason, I whispered to the empty car. You deserve the truth. I tossed the crumpled paper into the trash can. I locked the warehouse door. The heavy steel bolt slid home with a satisfying clank. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time for the dinner. The Bon Voyage party they had invited me to, presumably to extract one last check before they disappeared. They thought they were celebrating their departure. They didn't know they were attending their own eviction hearing. I checked my bank account on my phone. The lawyer's retainer had cleared. The tow fee was paid. I still had more liquid cash available than Jason would see in his lifetime. I was ready. I would go to that dinner. I would eat their food. I would listen to their lies about how much they would miss me. And then I would serve the main course. I got back in my truck. The city lights were coming on. It was a beautiful evening for a demolition. Thursday evening arrived with a break in the weather, the clouds parting just enough to let a bruised purple sunset bleed across the Seattle skyline. I stood on the front porch of my son's house, adjusting the collar of my jacket. I wasn't wearing my work boots today. I was wearing my Sunday shoes, polished to a shine, and a clean button-down shirt. I wanted to look respectable when I delivered the eviction notice. I punched the code into the electronic lock. It was still the same code, the last 4 digits of my social security number. Jason hadn't even bothered to change it to something of his own. That was Jason in a nutshell, living on my identity because he hadn't forged one of his own. Inside, the house smelled of roasted garlic and expensive red wine. It was the smell of a celebration. I walked into the foyer, my footsteps muffled by the runner rug I had bought them last Christmas. Laughter drifted from the dining room, clinking glasses, the smooth jazz playlist Jason liked to put on when he was pretending to be a man of the world. I stepped into the archway of the dining room, and the laughter died instantly. They were all seated around the mahogany table. Robert Thompson was at the head of the table, my seat holding a glass of scotch like a scepter. Susan was next to him, draped in a silk shawl that probably cost more than the timber I had returned. Mia was glowing, already dressed in a resort-wear maxi dress, looking like she was already in the tropics. And Jason sat there looking like a man on death row who was trying to enjoy his last meal. He looked up at me, his eyes darting nervously. He was pale. The incident with the tow truck yesterday had shaken him, but he hadn't told his wife or her parents. He couldn't. Admitting that his father had repossessed his car would shatter the illusion he had built for them. He was trapped in his own lie, forced to smile while the noose tightened. "Bill," Robert boomed, his voice too loud, too jovial. Come in, we were just toasting to the voyage. Grab a chair, old sport. There's plenty of wine, though. I'm not sure it's up to your industrial standards." Susan giggled into her napkin. "Oh, stop it, Robert. Bill likes what he likes. Not everyone appreciates a 20-year single malt." I pulled out a chair at the far end of the table opposite Robert. I sat down slowly, letting my joints crack audibly. I wanted them to hear the age they despised. "Thank you, Robert," I said, my voice flat. "I'm fine with water." Mia smiled, a tight, thin stretching of her lips. "We're so glad you could stop by to say goodbye, Bill. It's such a shame you can't join us, really. But honestly, looking at the itinerary, it's just too active. Shore excursions, walking tours, dancing on the deck until midnight. We didn't want you to feel left out or exhausted trying to keep up with us young people." I looked at Mia. She was 34. I was 70. Last week I had carried 80-pound bags of concrete for 6 hours. She hired a maid to dust the blinds. "I understand, Mia," I said. "Health is a priority. You have to preserve your energy." "Exactly." She nodded, missing the sarcasm entirely. "And the sea air. It can be so damp. For your arthritis, staying here in the warm house is really the best option. We're doing this for you, really." "For me," I repeated. "That's very considerate." "We'll send photos," Susan chirped. "The royal suite apparently has a balcony bigger than this dining room. Can you imagine drinking coffee while watching the sunrise over the Caribbean?" I could imagine it perfectly. In fact, I plan to do exactly that in about 48 hours. It sounds expensive, I said, baiting the hook. Robert waved his hand dismissively. Quality costs, Bill. You can't put a price on memories. Jason here has done well. He's treating us to the best. It's a mark of a man who knows how to take care of his family. You must be proud that he's finally evolved beyond the hammer and nail mindset. I looked at Jason. He was staring at his plate, pushing a piece of asparagus around with his fork. He was sweating. He knew the money wasn't real. He knew the car was gone. He knew he was hours away from having to explain how they were getting to the airport without a vehicle. I am very proud of Jason's creativity, I said. He certainly has a way with numbers. Jason flinched. He looked up at me, pleading with his eyes. Don't blow my cover, Dad. Not now. I took a sip of water. The room felt suffocatingly fake. Everything, the furniture, the food, the smiles, was bought with stolen equity. It was a stage set, and the actors were bad. So, Bill, Mia said, changing the subject, while we're gone, could you maybe come by and water the plants and the mail? We don't want it piling up. It looks bad for the neighborhood. I'll take care of the house, Mia, I said. I intend to spend a lot of time here. Oh, just the garden is fine, she said quickly. We locked the master bedroom, privacy. I smiled internally. They locked the bedroom in a house I owned. It was adorable. The dinner dragged on. They talked about the shows they would see, the jewelry shopping in Nassau, the spa treatments they had pre-booked. Robert bragged about his golf game. Susan complained about her housekeeper. Mia complained that her new luggage set wasn't quite the right shade of beige. I sat there, the invisible man, the wallet with a pulse. I ate their food, which tasted like ash. I watched them preen and posture, bloated on unearned luxury. As the dessert was served, a store-bought tiramisu that Mia presented, as if she'd made it. Jason stood up. Dad, can I talk to you in the kitchen for a second? I need to show you where the fuse box key is. We didn't have a fuse box key. It was a breaker panel. I installed it. It didn't have a lock. Sure, son, I said. I followed him into the kitchen. As soon as the swinging door closed, isolating us from the chatter in the dining room, Jason slumped against the granite counter. The successful consultant mask fell off, leaving a terrified boy. Dad, he hissed, his voice trembling. You have to give me the car back. Please. I checked Uber prices. It's $200 to get us and the luggage to the airport. I don't have it. $200? I asked, feigning surprise. That's pocket change for a man making $140,000 a year. Stop it, he whispered, glancing at the door. You know I don't make that. I need the car. Or, look, if you won't give me the car, can you loan me $2,000? $2,000. I raised an eyebrow. For an Uber? No, he stammered, wiping sweat from his forehead. It's a medical thing. The cruise line requires international medical evacuation insurance for the baby. It's a new policy. If we don't pay it by midnight, they cancel the tickets. I didn't know. I'm tapped out, Dad. Just float me the $2,000. I'll pay you back when I get the commission check next week. I looked at him. He was lying. There was no medical insurance fee. He needed cash. He probably needed it to tip the porters or to buy a drink on the plane, or maybe to pay off a minimum balance on a card so it wouldn't get declined at the hotel. He was desperate. He was begging his victim for one last drop of blood. Medical insurance, I said slowly. That sounds serious. You wouldn't want to be stranded without coverage. Exactly. Jason nodded eagerly, thinking he had hooked me again. It's for the baby, Dad. Your granddaughter. You don't want her to be unsafe, do you? He played the granddaughter card. The ultimate weapon. He knew I would do anything for that little girl. He was using her as a human shield for his wallet. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I felt the thick envelope resting there. It wasn't money. It was heavier than money. I don't have cash on me, Jason, I said softly. His face fell. You can write a check or transfer it. Zelle me, right now. I have something better, I said. I brought a bon voyage gift, something that will take care of all your financial worries, something that settles the accounts. Jason's eyes lit up. He thought it was a check, a big one, maybe 10,000, maybe enough to save him. Really, Dad? He breathed a sigh of relief. I knew you wouldn't let me down. I told Mia you were just being grumpy about the car. I knew you'd come through. I always come through, Jason, I said. Let's go back to the table. I want to give it to you in front of everyone. It's a family moment. Okay, he said, straightening his tie, the arrogance returning instantly. Yeah, let's do that. Mia will be so happy. We walked back into the dining room. Jason strode in with a renewed swagger. He winked at Mia. She perked up, sensing the shift in the dynamic. She thought the ATM had dispensed cash again. Everything all right? Robert asked, pouring himself another glass of wine. Perfect, Jason said, sitting down. Bill and I just cleared up some logistics, and Dad has a surprise for us. All eyes turned to me. Mia looked expectant. Susan looked curious. Robert looked like he was appraising a horse. I stood at the head of the table behind my empty chair. I reached into my jacket. I know I'm not going on this trip, I began, my voice steady and clear. And I know there have been some discussions about my age and my ability to keep up, but I wanted to make sure that before you leave, everything is in order. I wanted to make sure you got exactly what you deserve. Mia smiled, a greedy, predatory glint in her eyes. Oh, Bill, you didn't have to. Yes, I did, I said. I pulled out the thick manila envelope. It wasn't wrapped. It was stamped with the logo of the bank in red ink. I slid it across the polished mahogany table. It spun slowly and stopped right in front of Jason's wine glass. Bon voyage, I said. Jason picked it up. He frowned at the bank logo. He probably thought it was a savings bond or a cashier's check inside. He tore open the flap. He pulled out the stack of papers. The first page was stiff, legal-sized paper. At the top, in bold black letters, it read, Notice of acceleration and demand for payment in full. Underneath that, stapled to the back, was a document with a red border notice of intent to foreclose. The room went silent. The only sound was the rustle of paper as Jason's hands began to shake violently. What? Jason whispered. What is this, Moo? Read it. I said, cold as the grave. Read it out loud, son, to the family. Jason stared at the paper in his hands as if it were written in a foreign language. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The blood had drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure melting under the heat of the chandelier. Read it, Jason, I repeated, my voice cutting through the silence like a diamond blade. Read the bold text in the center of the page. He swallowed hard. His hands were trembling so violently the paper rattled against the mahogany table. Notice of acceleration, he whispered, his voice cracking. Pursuant to Clause 14, due to material misrepresentation of borrower income, the lender hereby exercises its right to accelerate the debt. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a terror that was finally genuine. Accelerate, he asked, weak as water. What does that mean? It means the payment schedule is over, son, I said, leaning forward, my hands flat on the table. It means the 30-year mortgage is now a 0-day mortgage. It means you owe the entire principal balance, $150,000, plus the $30,000 you stole from the line of credit, plus penalties, plus legal fees. Jason dropped the paper. It fluttered onto his half-eaten tiramisu, ruining the dessert, just like he had ruined his credit. $180,000, he choked out. Immediately, I confirmed. Unless you can write a check for that amount right now, the foreclosure proceedings begin tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. The bank does not play games with fraud, Jason. Mia stood up so fast her chair fell backward, crashing onto the hardwood floor. Fraud, she shrieked. What are you talking about? There was no fraud. We got approved, you co-signed. I looked at her calmly. I did co-sign, Mia. I co-signed based on the income statements Jason provided. The statements that claimed he was making $140,000 a year as a consultant. I paused, letting the number hang in the air. But today I corrected the record. I informed the bank's fraud department that those consulting invoices were actually cash gifts from me. I provided my bank statements to prove it. I essentially told them that the borrower lied on a federal loan application. The room erupted. You told them, Jason screamed, jumping up. You reported me. You are my father. You are supposed to protect me. I was protecting myself. Jason, I shouted back, my voice finally rising to match the thunder in my chest. I was protecting my name. You used my credit to build a lie. You committed a felony, and you dragged me into it. Did you think I would just sit there and let you steal $30,000 from the equity to go on a boat ride while I paid the interest? Mia grabbed a wine glass and threw it. It shattered against the wall behind me, spraying red wine like blood across the expensive wallpaper. You monster, she screamed. We have a baby. You are making us homeless. You are ruining our lives over money. I did not flinch. I watched the wine drip down the wall. I am not ruining your life, Mia, I said coldly. I am just turning on the lights. The roaches hate the light, but the house needs it. You ruined your life when you decided to treat me like an ATM instead of a person. You ruined it when you mocked me in my own basement. Robert Thompson, the man who had been bragging about his golf game 5 minutes ago, looked like he was having a stroke. He sputtered, his face turning purple. Now see here, Bill, this is highly irregular. You cannot just evict family. Surely we can work this out. A payment plan. We can call the bank manager. I know people. I turned my gaze to him. It was a look I usually reserved for subcontractors who tried to overcharge me for shoddy work. You know people, Robert Good. Do you know anyone who will lend your son-in-law $180,000 by tomorrow morning? Because that is what it takes to stop this. Robert fell silent. He looked at Susan. They both knew they did not have that kind of money. They were leeching off Jason just as much as Jason was leeching off me. Well, surely that is excessive. Robert stammered. It is the law, I said. And since Jason cannot pay, the bank will seize the asset. That means this house. I looked around the room. I looked at the crown molding I had installed, the custom lighting fixtures. It is over, I said. The bank will take possession. But since I am the guarantor, the debt falls to me. I will pay off the loan to save my credit, which means the house becomes mine. Legally, completely. I looked at Jason. He was crying now. Great heaving sobs that shook his shoulders. It was pathetic. So, you are kicking us out, he wept. You are kicking your granddaughter out on the street. I am not kicking you out, I said. The bank is. And as for my granddaughter, she is welcome to stay with me. In my house, where there is no debt, where there is honesty. But you two, you made it clear. Family only. And apparently I am not the kind of family you want around. I am too old. Too dusty. Mia gasped. She remembered the words. She realized I had heard everything. You were listening, she whispered, horrified. I nodded. I heard it all, Mia. I heard you call me a hassle. I heard you laugh about how easy it was to manipulate me. I heard you planning to wait for me to die so you could cash in the insurance. I leaned in close to her, my face inches from hers. Well, I have bad news, honey. I am not dying. And the insurance policy, I canceled that too. The only thing you are inheriting is the consequences of your own greed. Jason looked up, his eyes red and swollen. Dad, please. The cruise. We paid $25,000. We can't get that back. If we lose the house and the vacation, we have nothing. I smiled. It was the smile of a demolition expert watching the charges go off perfectly. You don't have nothing, Jason. You have each other. Isn't that what you wanted? A trip just for the three of you? Well, now you have a whole life just for the three of you. No dusty old man to bother you. No dad to audit your spending. You are free. He stared at me, unable to comprehend the absolute finality of my words. But where will we go? He whispered. I pointed toward the back of the house, toward the sliding glass door covered by the curtain. Well, you definitely cannot use the back deck, I said. I canceled the wood order this afternoon. The joists are exposed. It is a safety hazard, just like your finances. I looked at the clock on the wall. You have 30 days to vacate before the sheriff arrives to enforce the foreclosure. I said, lying slightly to give them hope while knowing the reality was much grimmer. But considering the utilities are in my name and I shut them off effective tomorrow morning, I suggest you start packing tonight. Utilities? Mia screeched. You turned off the power and the water, I shrugged. Why should I pay for electricity in a house I don't live in? I am tightening the purse strings. Remember, I buttoned my jacket. The room was silent now except for Jason's weeping. The dinner was cold. The wine was spilled. The illusion was shattered. I looked at Robert and Susan one last time. You might want to offer them your guest room, Robert, I said. They are going to need it. Unless, of course, you are too busy enjoying the finer things to help family. Robert looked down at his shoes, unable to meet my eyes. He was a coward. A man who liked the idea of wealth but had no stomach for the cost of it. I walked toward the front door. My footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor. It was a sound of departure, a sound of ending. Dad! Jason yelled, running after me. He grabbed my arm in the hallway. I stopped. I looked at his hand on my sleeve. He let go as if he had touched a hot stove. Dad, please, he begged, falling to his knees in the foyer. I am sorry. I am so sorry. We were stupid. We got carried away. Please don't take the house. Please fix this. I will do anything. I will work for you. I will pay you back every cent. I looked down at my son, 38 years old, kneeling on the floor in a suit he couldn't afford, begging for a life he hadn't earned. I felt a twinge of pain in my heart, a deep, ancient ache. But I smothered it. I had to. If I helped him now, he would never learn. He would just find a new way to bleed me dry. It is too late for work, Jason, I said softly. You spent 10 years avoiding work. You spent 10 years building a facade instead of a foundation. I opened the front door. The cool night air rushed in, cleansing the house of the scent of expensive candles and lies. But Dad, the cruise. We can cancel it, right? We can get the money back to pay the bank. I paused on the threshold. Oh, the cruise, I said, turning back with a look of mock sympathy. I wouldn't worry about the cruise, Jason. Why, he asked, hopeful, desperate. Because I handled that too. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door firmly behind me. I heard him screaming my name from the other side of the wood, but I did not stop. I walked down the path to where I had parked my truck around the corner. I did not look back. I had torn down the house. I had ripped up the foundation. Now all that was left was to clear the debris and move on. They had a long night ahead of them, a night of panic, a night of packing, a night of realizing that without me, they were nothing. And tomorrow, when they woke up in a cold, dark house with no water for their coffee, they would make one last desperate attempt to save themselves. They would try to salvage the vacation. They would think that even if they lost the house, they still had the tickets. They still had the escape. They had no idea that I had already boarded that ship long before it ever left the dock. I had barely reached the handle of my truck door when I heard the front door of the house fly open again. It banged against the siding with a violence that made me wince, not for the people inside, but for the hinges I had installed. Jason came running down the wet driveway in his socks. He was slipping on the pavement, flailing like a man trying to run on ice. Mia was right behind him, her long resort dress dragging through the puddles, ruining the hem. They looked like refugees from a party that had ended in an apocalypse. Jason grabbed the side mirror of my truck, gasping for air. His face was a mask of sheer panic. The reality of the paperwork I had thrown on the table was finally metabolizing in his system. He wasn't just scared of losing the vacation anymore. He was scared of losing his shelter. "Dad, wait," he choked out. "You cannot leave. You cannot just drop a foreclosure notice and walk away. We need to call the bank together. We need to tell them it was a mistake. You have to fix this." I looked at him calmly. I did not open the door. I stood there with my keys in my hand, feeling the cold rain dampen my shoulders. It felt cleansing. "There is no mistake, Jason," I said. "The bank knows exactly what happened. They know you lied about your income. They know you raided the equity. They know the house is a high-risk asset. And banks do not like risk. They eliminate it. Just like I am doing." Mia pushed past Jason, her face twisted into a snarl that exposed the ugliness she usually hid behind makeup and fake smiles. She got right in my face, smelling of wine and desperation. "You are evil," she screamed. "You are a sick, twisted old man who does this to their own family. You set us up. You let us book the trip. You let us plan our lives, and then you pull the rug out. You want to see us on the street. You want your granddaughter to sleep in a gutter." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had called me dusty, the woman who had laughed at my clothes while spending my money. "I did not set you up, Mia," I said, my voice low and hard. "I propped you up. For 5 years I held up the walls of this life you pretended to build. I paid the bills you hid. I fixed the leaks you ignored. I co-signed the loans you could not qualify for. And how did you repay me? You excluded me. You mocked me. You decided I was just a utility bill you could complain about." "You are the one who is selfish," she spat back. "You have millions. We know you do. You could pay off this mortgage with a check and not even feel it. But you would rather punish us. You would rather be right than be a father." I laughed. It was a dark sound. "You are right, Mia. I could pay it off. In fact, that is exactly what is going to happen." Jason looked up, hope flaring in his eyes for a second. You are going to pay it off?" he asked. "You are going to save the house?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, Jason. I am going to save the house. But not for you." "What do you mean?" he whispered. I leaned against the truck, crossing my arms. "When the bank accelerated the loan today, they demanded payment in full. $180,000. Since you are the borrower and you are broke, you defaulted instantly. That triggered the guarantor clause." I paused, making sure they heard every syllable. "They came to me, Jason. They called me 10 minutes before I walked into your house. They told me the loan was in default. And since I am the one with the assets, I am the one liable for the debt. So you pay it, and we just pay you back?" Jason asked, his voice trembling with a pathetic optimism. "Like a monthly rent?" I shook my head. "No, son. That is not how foreclosure works when the guarantor steps in to protect his credit. I wired the money to the bank this afternoon. I paid off the entire balance. The mortgage is satisfied." Mia let out a breath of relief. "Oh, thank God. See, Jason, I told you he wouldn't let us sink. Okay, Bill, we can work out a payment plan. We can. I cut her off with a raised hand. You are not listening. I paid off the loan. I bought the debt. And per the agreement I signed with the bank to settle the default, the title of the property transfers to the party who satisfied the lien. I pointed a finger at the ground. At the driveway. At the house looming behind them. The bank signed the deed over to me, Jason. It is electronically recording at the county clerk's office tomorrow morning. Jason's knees actually gave out. He slumped against my truck, sliding down until he was sitting on the wet asphalt. It is your house, he whispered. It has always been my house, I said. I paid for the down payment. I paid for the renovations. I paid for the repairs. And now I have paid off the mortgage. You were just guests. Guests who overstayed their welcome. Mia looked at the house, then back at me, her eyes wide with horror. She realized she had just screamed insults at her landlord who had zero reason to show mercy. But we have rights, she stammered. Tenant rights. You have to give us notice. I smiled. The legal shark in me, the part of me that had dealt with contract disputes for 40 years, stepped forward. Actually, Mia, you are not tenants. You never signed a lease, you never paid rent. You were occupants by familial permission. And since the ownership has changed due to foreclosure proceedings, the timeline is very specific. I walked past them toward the side of the house. I gestured for them to follow. They stumbled after me like zombies. I stopped at the gate that led to the backyard. I pointed through the slats. Look at that, I said. They looked. In the gloom of the twilight, the backyard looked like a bomb site. The deck I had ordered demolished was gone. The sliding glass door opened into thin air, a 4-foot drop to the muddy ground. The yard was littered with scraps of old wood and the tarp I had left flapping in the wind. It looks like a ruin, doesn't it? I said. It looks unfinished. It looks broken. Just like your finances. Just like your marriage. Jason looked at the mud. He looked at the place where he had planned to host his parties. Why did you cancel the wood? Dad, he asked softly. Because you don't put teak floors on a sinking ship, I replied. I turned back to face them. The rain was matting Jason's hair to his forehead. Mia's mascara was running down her cheeks. You have 30 days, I said. 30 days, Jason gasped. To what? To fix it, to get out, I said. 30 days to pack your boxes. 30 days to find a new place to live. 30 days to vacate my property. But we have nowhere to go, Mia shrieked. We have no money. You took the car. You took the house. I took back what was mine, I corrected. And as for where you go, I suggest you ask your parents. Mia. Robert seemed very proud of his ability to provide. I am sure he has room in his guest house. Mia went pale. She knew her parents. She knew they were leveraged to the hilt just like she was. They rented their condo. They leased their cars. They didn't have room for a family of 3 with no income. You cannot do this, Jason pleaded, grabbing my leg. Dad, please. The baby. Olivia. Where will she sleep? I pulled my leg away. I told you, Jason. Olivia is welcome with me. I have a room for her. I have a trust for her. She will never want for anything. But she cannot live with you right now, not while you are toxic. Not while you are teaching her that lying is a career path. I looked at my watch. Your 30 days started when I handed you that envelope. I suggest you don't waste time arguing. You have a lot of packing to do. I walked back to my truck. I climbed in and locked the door. Jason scrambled up and banged on the window. Dad, wait the cruise. We can cancel the cruise, we can get the money back and pay you rent. Just give us a chance, I rolled down the window. Just an inch. The glass formed a barrier between his hysteria and my resolve. You cannot cancel the cruise, Jason, I said. Why not? He screamed. Because I called the cruise line this afternoon, I said, my voice calm and final. I told them there was a change in the passenger manifest. He froze. What, since I am the primary account holder on the card used to book the trip, I exercised my right to transfer the booking. I put the truck in gear. The tickets are not in your name anymore, son. You are not going to the Bahamas. I rolled up the window, cutting off his next scream. I backed out of the driveway, leaving them standing in the rain in front of a house they no longer owned, watching the taillights of the only man who had ever truly supported them fade into the night. They had lost the house. They had lost the car. And in about 48 hours, they were going to realize they had lost the vacation too. But the worst part for them wasn't the loss of material things. It was the realization that they had pushed the one person who loved them past the point of no return. I drove away. I did not feel guilty. I felt like a surgeon who had just cut out a tumor. It was messy. It was painful. But it was the only way to survive. Now I just had to pack my own bags. I had a ship to catch. Friday morning broke over Seattle, with a gray, heavy sky that matched the mood inside the house I now legally owned. I was not there to see it, but I knew exactly what was happening. I had raised Jason. I knew his patterns. When he was backed into a corner, he did not fight. He scrambled. He looked for the easy out. He looked for the undo button. I imagined them in the kitchen. It would be cold. I had called the utility company at 8 a.m. sharp yesterday to suspend service. The residual heat would have bled out of the walls overnight, leaving the air inside damp and chill. They would have tried the coffee maker and found it dead. They would have tried the shower and found it dry. They were waking up in a tomb. But Jason would have a plan. He always had a plan when he was desperate. I could picture him pacing the hardwood floor in his socks, holding his cell phone like a lifeline. Mia would be wrapped in a blanket sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes swollen from crying, her makeup smeared from the night before. They were facing homelessness. They were facing bankruptcy. But in their minds, there was still one asset left on the table. The cruise. $25,000. To them it was a fortune. It was a lifeline. It was enough to rent an apartment for 6 months. It was enough to lease a new car. It was enough to buy them time to figure out their next con. They thought the money was gone because I said so. But Jason was arrogant. He would think I was bluffing. He would think that because he physically booked the reservation, because his name was on the confirmation email, he had the power to cancel it. He was about to learn a very expensive lesson about the terms and conditions of credit card agreements. At 9 a.m., while I was calmly folding my tuxedo into my vintage leather suitcase, Jason made the call. I know this because the travel concierge called me 10 minutes later to report the interaction as per my instructions. I can visualize it perfectly. Jason putting the phone on speaker, his hands shaking. The cheerful hold music of the Royal Bahama line mocking their misery. Mia leaning in, biting her nails, whispering to him to be aggressive, to demand a supervisor, to get the cash refund, not a travel credit. Finally, a representative picked up. "Thank you for calling Royal Bahama Line. This is Sarah. How may I assist you today?" "Hi," Jason would have said, his voice cracking with the strain of pretending to be a man in control. "I need to cancel a reservation. It is for the Carter party departing today. Confirmation number Romeo X-ray 49. I see the reservation." Sir Sarah would have replied, clicking away on her keyboard. "That is a booking for the Royal Suite. A beautiful cabin. May I ask the reason for the cancellation?" "Medical emergency." Jason lied. It was his go-to. It was the lie he used to borrow money from me. It was the lie he used to get out of work. "We have a family crisis. We need a full refund processed immediately to the card on file." Mia would be nodding beside him, calculating how fast they could get the money. "1 moment, please, sir. Let me pull up the billing details." The silence on the line would have been agonizing. Jason looking at the clock. The foreclosure clock ticking in the background. "Sir, I see the booking here," Sarah said. However, I cannot process a cancellation for this itinerary. Why not? Jason demanded. We purchased the travel insurance. It says cancel for any reason. I want my money back. I understand, sir, but there has been a modification to this booking made by the primary account holder yesterday afternoon. Jason froze. Modification? What modification? I didn't authorize any modification. I am the one who booked it, technically, sir. The booking was met using an American Express Platinum card ending in 4099. While you are listed as the passenger and an authorized user on the account, our records show the primary account holder is a Mr. William Carter. So what? Jason snapped. It is my dad's card, but I manage it. Just cancel the trip. I cannot do that, sir. Mr. William Carter contacted our executive desk yesterday. He invoked the ownership clause of the rewards agreement. Since the purchase was made on his credit line, the reservation is considered his asset. Mia grabbed the phone. Listen to me, you idiot. We are the passengers. It is our vacation. We are not going. We want the $25,000 put back on the card so we can withdraw it. I apologize, ma'am, Sarah said, her voice hardening. But Mr. Carter was very specific. He advised us that the original passengers were unable to attend due to unforeseen housing issues. He has transferred the booking. Transferred it, Jason whispered. To whom? To himself, sir. And 3 guests. The manifest has been updated. The tickets have been reissued. Mr. William Carter is currently checked in for boarding. The room must have spun for them. The lifeline was cut. The parachute had failed to open. Checked in, Jason repeated. He is going. Yes, sir. The reservation is active and non-refundable at this stage as the primary passenger has confirmed attendance. There are no funds to return to you because the trip is proceeding. But that is our money, Mia screamed at the speakerphone. We paid off the balance. We used our home equity. Ma'am, I cannot speak to the source of your payments. I can only see that the charge was processed on Mr. William Carter's American Express account. Under banking regulations, the primary cardholder retains full control of all transactions and disputes. He has assumed control of this booking. Is there anything else I can help you with? Jason hung up. He did not say goodbye. He just pressed the button and ended the call. They sat there in the silence of the cold kitchen. The $25,000 was gone. It was floating in the ocean, waiting for me. They realized then the absolute thoroughness of my dismantling of their lives. I hadn't just taken the house, I hadn't just taken the car. I had taken their escape. Jason likely looked at Mia, waiting for her to come up with a plan, waiting for her to fix it. But Mia was looking at him with a new expression. It wasn't love. It wasn't partnership. It was revulsion. You lost it, she hissed. You lost everything. You told me the card was yours. You told me you had control. I thought I did, Jason stammered. I have a card with my name on it. It is a supplementary card, you moron, she screamed, throwing a decorative bowl across the room. It broke against the cabinets I had installed. You are just an authorized user. You are a child with an allowance, and now your daddy has cut you off. She stood up, pacing frantically. We have to leave. We have to go to my parents. Call them. Tell them we are coming for a few weeks. Jason nodded, pulling up his contacts. He dialed Robert Thompson's number. I can imagine that call, too. Robert answering, expecting a call from the airport lounge, expecting to hear about the champagne in the first-class cabin. Hey, Robert, Jason said, his voice trembling. Look, there has been a change of plans. The cruise, we aren't going. What do you mean you aren't going? Robert asked. Did you miss the flight? No. It is complicated. Bill, Dad, he sort of canceled it. And he took the house back. Took the house back? Robert asked, his voice dropping the fake accent. What are you talking about, Jason? We are being evicted. Jason confessed the shame burning in his throat. Today, we have nowhere to go. We need to come stay with you and Susan, just for a bit, until I get my commission check. There was a long silence on the line. Then Robert laughed. It was a nervous, tight laugh. "Oh, Jason, that is not going to work. Susan and I, we are downsizing. The condo is very small. We really don't have the room for 3 people and a baby. And honestly, if Bill is involved in this mess, we do not want to get in the middle of a family dispute." "But we have no money, Robert," Jason cried. "We have nothing." "Well, that sounds like a personal problem, sport," Robert said, cold as ice. "You sold yourself as a provider, Jason. If you cannot provide, that is hardly my responsibility. Maybe you should have treated your father better." He seemed like the only one with actual liquidity. Robert hung up. Jason lowered the phone. He looked at Mia. "They said no," he whispered. Mia stared at him. Her parents, the people she had tried so hard to impress, the people she had mocked me to please, had turned their backs the moment the money ran out. They were alone. I was at the airport now, walking through the terminal. My bag rolled smoothly behind me. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No texts. They knew. They finally understood that I was unreachable. I stopped at the newsstand and bought a pack of gum. I handed the cashier my black card, the same card Jason had carried in his wallet for 5 years, thinking it made him powerful. It didn't make him powerful. It made him dependent. And dependency is a leash. I had just yanked it so hard it snapped their necks. I walked toward the gate. I was meeting my friends there. 3 men I had served with in the Navy 40 years ago. Men who knew the meaning of loyalty. Men who didn't care about granite countertops or designer shoes. We were going to drink scotch, play poker, and watch the ocean. I thought about Jason and Mia one last time. They were probably packing boxes now, putting their expensive clothes into garbage bags because they couldn't afford moving boxes. They would be fighting, blaming each other. The toxicity that they had directed at me for years would now turn inward. They would consume each other. It was a tragedy, yes, but it was a necessary one. I boarded the plane. I took my seat in first class, the seat Jason had booked. I stretched out my legs. My knees didn't hurt as much today. Maybe it was the weather clearing up. Or maybe it was the weight I had dropped. 180 pounds of ungrateful son and 120 pounds of spiteful daughter-in-law. The pilot announced our departure. We were flying into the sun. I closed my eyes and slept better than I had in 10 years. The silence on the line was absolute and terrifying for my son. I can imagine the blood draining from his face as the customer service representative, a woman named Sarah, who I had spoken to only hours before, delivered the news that would shatter his last delusion of control. Jason was holding the phone with a grip so tight, his knuckles were white, waiting for the refund confirmation number that would save his life. Instead, he got a lesson in banking regulations. "Sir, I cannot process a refund because the reservation has not been cancelled," Sarah said, her voice calm, professional, and utterly destructive. "The booking is active and confirmed." "Active," Jason stammered, looking at Mia, who was biting her fingernails in the corner of the cold kitchen. "What do you mean active? I am telling you to cancel it. We are not going. We need the money back on the card." "I understand that you are not going, sir," Sarah replied. "However, the primary cardholder contacted us yesterday afternoon. He exercised his right under the Platinum Card Member Agreement to assume control of all pending transactions on the account. He has updated the passenger manifest." Jason felt the room spin. The primary cardholder. Those 3 words hit him harder than the foreclosure notice. For 5 years he had carried that heavy metal American Express card in his wallet. He had slapped it down on dinner tables to impress clients. He had used it to book flights and hotels, feeling the weight of its prestige. He had convinced himself and his wife that it was his success in his pocket. He had conveniently forgotten that he never paid the bill. He had forgotten that he had never undergone the credit check. He was just an authorized user, a child with a glorified allowance. Dad. Jason whispered into the phone, the realization horrifying him. You mean Bill Carter? Yes. Mr. William Carter is the account owner, Sarah confirmed. He provided the necessary security clearance to modify the itinerary. Since the $25,000 charge was processed against his credit line, the reservation legally belongs to him. He has transferred the tickets to his own name and 3 companions. Mia, who had been listening with her ear pressed close to the phone, let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. She snatched the phone from Jason's trembling hand. Listen to me, she shrieked, her voice echoing off the bare cabinets. That is our vacation. We planned it. It is our anniversary. You cannot just give our room to someone else because an old man made a phone call. That is theft. Ma'am, please lower your voice, Sarah said, her tone hardening. There is no theft. The cardholder pays the bill. The cardholder owns the rewards. Mr. Carter was very specific. He stated that the original passengers were unable to attend due to unforeseen housing instability. Housing instability. The phrase hung in the air like toxic smoke. It was the polite corporate way of saying we were homeless. So he is going, Mia asked, her voice trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. He is taking our cruise. Yes, ma'am, Sarah said. Mr. Carter and his party are currently checked in. The royal suite has been prepared for them. Is there anything else I can assist you with today? Mia did not answer. She tapped the end call button with a violence that threatened to crack the screen. She dropped the phone onto the granite island as if it were a poisonous snake. She looked at Jason. Her eyes were wide, red-rimmed, and filled with a sudden, clarifying hatred. He took it, she whispered. He took the house. He took the car. And now he took the vacation. Jason leaned against the counter, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. He looked small. He looked like a boy who had lost his mother at the grocery store, not a man who claimed to make 6 figures. I thought the card was mine, he mumbled into his knees. It had my name on it. It said Jason Carter right on the front. Mia laughed. It was a dry, broken sound. You idiot, she hissed. You absolute pathetic idiot. It was a supplementary card. You were playing dress-up with your daddy's money, and you didn't even know it. You told me you handled the finances. You told me you had control. You have nothing. You are nothing. Jason looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. Mia, please. We still have each other. We can figure this out. We have nothing, she screamed, grabbing a ceramic bowl from the counter and hurling it at the wall. It shattered the pieces, raining down on the floor I had tiled. We don't have a house. We have 30 days before the sheriff throws us out. We don't have a car to get to a job interview, even if you could get one. And now we don't have the $25,000 that was supposed to save us. That money is gone, Jason. It is floating in the ocean, drinking champagne with your father. She began to pace the kitchen, her expensive resort dress swirling around her legs, a mockery of the trip she would never take. We have to leave, she said, her voice frantic. We have to go to my parents. Call them. Tell them we are coming. Tell them it's just for a few weeks until your investment's clear. Lie to them, Jason. Do what you do best. Jason wiped his face. He nodded slowly. He reached for the phone. He knew it was a long shot. He knew Robert and Susan Thompson were fair-weather family. They liked him when he was buying dinner. They liked him when he was the successful consultant with the generous father. They would not like the version of him that was begging for a couch to sleep on. He dialed the number. He put it on speaker, maybe because he didn't want to hold the phone anymore, or maybe because he wanted Mia to hear the rejection firsthand, so she couldn't blame him for not trying hard enough. Robert answered on the second ring. The background noise was loud, clinking glasses chatter. He was at the country club, probably eating a lunch he couldn't afford. Hello? Robert's voice was jovial. Jason. Are you at the airport? Calling to brag about the first-class lounge? Hey, Robert, Jason said, his voice cracking. No, we aren't at the airport. There has been a change of plans. A change, Robert asked, the warmth instantly evaporating from his voice. What kind of change? Did you miss the flight? No, Jason said. We aren't going. The trip is cancelled. Cancelled? Opishit sounded annoyed. Well, that is a shame. I hope you got a refund. That was a lot of capital tied up in a boat ride. We didn't get a refund. Jason admitted, closing his eyes. It is complicated. Bill, my dad, he took the trip back. And he took the house back too. There was a silence on the line. The background noise of the country club seemed to fade away, leaving only the static of judgment. Took the house back? Robert asked, his voice sharp. What are you talking about, Jason? Is there a legal issue? We are being evicted. Jason said the words tasting like bile. The bank called the loan. Dad paid it off. Now he owns it. He gave us 30 days. We have nowhere to go, Robert. We need help. We need to come stay with you and Susan. Just for a bit. Just until I get back on my feet. The silence stretched. Mia looked at the phone, holding her breath. This was it. The safety net. The real family. Jason, Robert said slowly, his tone changing from annoyed to icy. That sounds incredibly messy. And frankly, it sounds like you have severely mismanaged your affairs. We just need a room, Jason pleaded. The guest room. We will buy our own food. Robert let out a sigh. Look, sport. I am going to be honest with you. Susan and I are downsizing. The condo is small. We barely have room for our own things. And if Bill Carter, a man I respect, by the way, has decided to pull the plug, there must be a very good reason. We do not want to get involved in a domestic dispute. It looks bad. But we are family. Mia yelled at the phone. Dad, it's me. We are homeless, Mia darling. Robert said, his voice smooth and detached. You are a grown woman. You married a provider. Or at least you told us he was a provider. If he cannot provide a roof over your head, that is a marital issue, not a parental one. We are going to the Hamptons next week. The timing is just impossible. Good luck, kids. The line went dead. Jason stared at the black screen. Mia stared at Jason. The rejection was total. The people they had tried so hard to impress, the people they had excluded me to please, had abandoned them the second the illusion of wealth evaporated. They were not family. They were an audience. And the show was over. Jason dropped his head into his hands again. We are alone, he whispered. Mia did not scream this time. She did not throw anything. She just slid down the cabinet until she was sitting on the floor across from him. She looked around the kitchen. The high-end appliances I had paid for. The granite countertops I had installed. It was all still there, but it wasn't theirs. It was a museum of their failure. I realized then that they weren't just mourning the loss of the cruise. They were mourning the loss of their identity. Without my money, without my credit, without my house, they didn't know who they were. They were just two broke people with expensive tastes and no skills. And thousands of miles away, or perhaps just a few hours by plane, I was walking onto a ship. I was handing a porter my bag. I was feeling the ocean breeze on my face. I was not checking my phone. I was not worrying about their rent. I was doing exactly what they had told me to do. I was staying out of their way. They sat in the ruins of their life, listening to the silence of a house that had finally stopped pretending to be a home. And for the first time, they understood the true cost of the ticket they had tried to buy. It cost them everything. The Atlantic Ocean has a way of making problems look small, especially when viewed from the private balcony of the royal suite. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the water in shades of gold and fire. I sat in a teak deck chair. Real teak. The kind I had refused to buy for Jason. In my hand was a glass of 25-year-old scotch. It tasted like smoke and victory. Around me sat 3 men I had known since boot camp 40 years ago. Mike, Sully, and Big Al. They were not wearing designer suits. They were wearing Hawaiian shirts and comfortable shorts. They were laughing about a poker game we had played in 1982. This was my family. Men who had pulled me out of burning buildings. Men who had lent me money when I started my business without asking for a promissory note. Men who judged you by your character, not your credit limit. My phone buzzed on the small table beside my drink. It danced across the glass surface, vibrating with a desperation I could feel through the furniture. It had been buzzing for hours. I picked it up one last time. The screen was filled with a wall of text from Jason. Dad, please answer. We are at a Motel 6. Mia is taking the baby to her sister in Ohio. She is leaving me, Dad. She says I ruined her life. I have $7 in my checking account. I am scared. Please tell the bank to stop. Please tell me you saved a room for me on the ship. I will fly out. Just tell me where to go. I looked at the words. A week ago, they would have broken my heart. A week ago, I would have wired money. I would have fixed it. But as I read them now, all I saw was the debris of a demolition I had ordered. He was not scared because he missed me. He was scared because his host organism had detached him. He was a parasite realizing he could not survive without the host. I took a sip of scotch. The ice clinked against the glass. I typed a reply. I did not rush. I chose my words with the precision of a master carpenter measuring a final cut. I scrolled up to the first message he had sent me. The one that started it all. The one that said family only. I typed, You were right, Jason. This cruise really is just for family. And family are the people who respect you when you are dusty, not just when you are writing checks. You wanted a life without my interference. You have it. Enjoy the independence, son. It is the most expensive thing you will ever own. I hit send. I watched the little check mark appear. Delivered. I did not wait for a reply. I stood up and walked to the railing. The ocean was dark and deep below, moving with the power of the tides. It was endless. It was free. I held the phone over the edge. It was a good phone. Expensive. But it was contaminated. It held the contacts of people who hated me. It held the history of my servitude. I let go. The phone tumbled end over end, flashing in the sunset before it hit the water with a tiny, insignificant splash. It was gone. The connection was severed. I turned back to my friends. Mike was pouring another round. Who was that? Bill Mike asked, handing me the bottle. Nobody, I said, taking the glass. Just a wrong number. I sat back down and raised my glass to the horizon. The ship's horn blasted a deep, resonant note signaling our departure toward the open sea. I took a drink, and for the first time in 40 years, I did not worry about the foundation. I just enjoyed the view. Looking back at the wake of that ship, I realized my biggest mistake wasn't cutting them off. It was waiting so long to do it. We often confuse enabling with love, thinking that if we pay the bills, we are being good parents. But true love is teaching your children that actions have consequences. By removing the safety net, I didn't destroy my son. I gave him the only chance he ever really had to become a man. You cannot buy respect, and you certainly cannot build a family on a foundation of debt and deceit. Sometimes walking away is the only way to move forward. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member to save yourself?